you, Robin, and can I just pass on my thanks to the Cheltenham Poetry Festival as well for inviting me. Can you all hear me? Is that loud enough? Okay, that's good. All right. Just in case you don't know, the Uffington White Horse is a Bronze Age chalk hill figure in southern Oxfordshire, and legend says that the horse comes to life and leaves the hill on certain nights. So these poems follow the horse on that flight of fancy. The inherent assumption behind these poems is completely absurd, which suits me fine. Okay, I'll give a little bit of commentary along the way as I go, but I'm going to keep it to a minimum because I'd like to get through all the poems, and if you want to have a look at the book afterwards or ask me more about it, if there's still time, then please do so. The White Horse and the Milky Way. Bored of grass, the white horse strays onto the Milky Way. Trodden stars clag his shoes like ridgeway chalk in rain. Across interstellar voids, he trails their detritus. Beneath his hooves, nebulae are disturbed. Asteroids scatter. Black holes open up. He startles as night fades, flashes back to turf, remembers he is only chalk. The horse periodically needs to be scoured, this is actually true, with trowels and hammers and fresh chalk to keep it in a pristine condition. So the white horse submits to a scouring. It is essential to remain perfectly still and resist the urge to arch the spine or cause a minor earthquake. The crust of algal bloom itches like eczema, and the white horse feels something like a whale who cannot rid his tail of barnacles. That scratching with a gleaming trowel keeps him on the edge of ecstasy and pain, and when fresh chalk is hammered into his pockmarks, it hurts worse than the reverse of depilation. He mustn't even twitch his tail or close his one visible eye. If only he could raise his head and nuzzle the nearest child. Before the flight, the horse is in need of a drink, so the white horse drinks at the spring beneath the manger. The spring which feeds the Ock, which feeds the Thames, comes out of a pipe in a glassy gush, a column of molten ice. There is snow enough to burden every branch, and a constant dripping that breeds liverworts and a black and wholesome sludge. The white horse comes gingerly, lest his hooves be smirched. Chalk mingles with ice crystals, stars become lost in snow. When the white horse drinks, there is no disturbance. The perfect spurt is not spattered, there is no spray, no sound of lapping. Just a slow absorption of water into chalk. The little fossils in the horse's eyeballs breathe again. His whole form is a white swarm of animalcules swimming for their lives. A white sign forbids trespass. A white owl spies a mouse. So the white horse now visits various monuments along the ridgeway, and because the horse is a horse, well beyond the ridgeway as well. First, the Iron Age fort on top of the horse's own hill, the White Horse over Uffington Castle. There is a moment of awkwardness, scrabbling out of turf and into sky. The horse must leap his first hurdle half lying down and shake the Bronze Age silt from his underside. Those grassed ramparts are new to him, comparatively. He saw the earth thrown up long after antlers were used for digging, flinched a little as the stakes were driven in. Tribes made him their emblem, although the idea of him had grown in a fist-sized clump of flint, his spine a glacial contour, bared by men with the earliest spades. From those, they progressed to aeroplanes and cars made lights to dim the stars, took too much stock of time. He falters, bridles, bolts towards Orion. Visiting Wayland's smithy, Neolithic burial mound, which is folklorically associated with Wayland the Smith, who will shrew your horse if you leave it outside, apparently, and leave him a coin. There is a smattering of asteroids and mist. Chalk hills are indistinguishable from clouds. Both have their ramparts, curves, flutes and coombs, gallops strewn with orchises and stars. The horse traverses them both. Soil and space are one to him, tramping the crowns of beech trees, clovers, cumulonimbus. He is held aloft by winds, the hootings of owls, the breath of ravens. Sheep and sarsens become identical, sleeping in the fields. There is whinnying above the smithy, an uncanny clattering in air, and out of the moth-dank cave something comes. The anvil rings, sparks and stars are one. The horse shudders chalk dust, paces, grows calm, raises his fetlock for the shoeing. Over Russley Downs, he finds an ancient field system carved into the hillside. The lynchets are a negative print, a system of shadows spilled with a blench of moonlight. Beach hangers sleep, villages are dormant. The white horse embosses himself in sky like a watermark, an undulation of chalk against cloud. Forking coombs wear uncanny silences for shrouds, the land engraved with centuries of human toil, the dead's intaglio in soil. Looking in on Snap, an abandoned village. Even the white horse has his work cut out finding Snap, though he watched it thrive as a Celtic village, state of the art. It was old when its name was written down in the 13th century. By Victoria's reign, it was known to breed country folk of uncommon health. They lived into their 90s in 10 or 15 houses, and the church schoolroom doubled as a church. He cranes his neck through the branches, catches a glimpse of Snap High Street, a rutted track of chalk, erratically cobbled, overhung by trees. House foundations are marked by nettles. A box tree has outgrown its garden, the gardener cast out by economics. The farmers who lived there could not compete with cheap American corn, and at the end of the century fell prey to invention. Frozen meat from Australia, New Zealand, cost less than lamb from Snap. Mr. Wilson, butcher, bought up the land. Some folks hung on, lived off barter in the schoolhouse. But time has a habit of whittling away, and the mortar crumbles for the elder tree. Street plans become earthworks, marks. The white horse sympathizes with Marx, being one himself. One of those urchin tests falls out of his eye, rolls onto the lane. He cocks his ear for the nightingale who doesn't sing. Nonplussed at Westbury, where he meets a modern white horse, or a modernised one, which is now covered in concrete. The white horse cannot suppress a snort or two of recognition before that inevitable sense of deflation sets in. There are even ramparts of a fort in the right position, and a grassy eye, but the beast itself is staid, restrained. It barely blinks or shudders, just stands there, looking handsome, doesn't paw the turf or kick up a clump of flinty loam, tame as a work of taxidermy. The lower lip hangs as though anaesthetised. The fossils in its skin have a look of extinction about them. Long ago, the Westbury horse had been good company for a gallop through the Pleiades. On dark nights, the old sickle tail was an acceptable substitute for a moon, and it scattered the lesser stars with stumpy legs. But that colt has been buried by enlightenment, the replacement inert as clay, quite drained of skittishness. Nothing works. No piaffe, passage, or pirouette can provoke the slightest whinny. Astray at Cerne Abbas, where there is a giant chalk man with an erect phallus. Things the white horse will never tell, the form of worship at his holy hill, whose lips have touched the blowing stone, how each hole in it was worn, how Sexbury, Liddington, Barbary were built, whose bones were buried and whose burnt, who went to hunt, who stayed to herd, who first cupped hands at Swallowhead, which fingernails were grimed with clay at Windmill Hill, and on which day the first brooch was cast in bronze. Where the swifts go on the breeze, where lob goes, how grim hides when farms fall into grasping hands. The ways and words of ancient folk, how to read their dreams in chalk, and when and why the virile man was etched in turf beneath the moon, and why his full frontal girth was matched with an with an ill-fashioned club, and how the lovelorn think it right to lie upon his shaft all night. And when the post office came to grips with him on postcards, the white horse skips a bit, frolics, thinks to lick unmentionable parts, knows he can run twice as rampant as any man. The white horse surveys Silbury Hill, an enormous Neolithic mound. 35 million basketfuls of chalk, stone, rubble, soil, excavated chunk by chunk with antler spades, stone axes, sweat, blisters, deaths of strong men, and passed man to woman, woman to man in a ragged line, worn with fatigue and not ever dumped, but sculpted, stepped, rounded, heaped into a hill filled with offerings, bone, mistletoe, ox ribs, flint, moss. Brawn made it, but also brain. Whole lives flowed and ebbed. Autumn leaves dropped from trees 150 times. Men murdered, made love, sowed, reaped, ploughed, sowed through short lives, plod by plod, until one day it was built. But why it was built, and what burnt as sacrifice at its summit, no one remembers. The motive is all gone, and the white horse was not engraved in turf in those days. If they grieved some chieftain wrapped in moss, time devoured his stripped remains. Brachiopods in the white horse's eye open like watches. He scores the sky in a holding pattern. BMWs break speed limits on the A-road, brook no compromise with time, and miss it all in their frenzied quest for bliss. The White Horse over Avebury Cove, which is part of an enormous Neolithic stone circle and henge. Some of the stone was taken from the circle to build the church and the village of Avebury. Rime lends Sarsens a chalky hue in moonlight, squat stone and tall gaunt in the field. Micrustas cluster around the heart of the white horse. The ash tree wears its own crust of frost, the twigs brittle, upturned. Beyond ditch and rampart, the church is founded on split Sarsens, its font etched with dragons, each subdued beneath a bishop's feet, his crozier raised as if to deal a fatal blow. The white horse sees pagan and Christian frozen in stone, each household walled with Sarsens turned inwards on its hearth. Earth is dormant, chalk horse, fossils, flint, stars, frost. These breathe and live. The white horse hightails it over Avebury. It's that calm arrangement of objects on a gigantic scale that pleases him every time. Ditches excavated, mounds piled by spades made of shoulder blades of oxen, man-killing Sarsens transported on tree trunks with ropes of nettle to hold them steady, the thunderous clump of Silbury raised out of piles small as molehills, the sanctuary, its burden of dead flensed by kites, and great stone-mouthed barrows where skulls and long bones were filed like books in libraries for future reference. The white horse knows there is nowhere like it in the world. Tests of Sidaris give him goose pimples. There are tremors amongst ancient corals in his tail. Then there is the church hanging outside the cursus, like a satellite or a menhir from a missing avenue of stones split by fire for building houses, and those modern roads gouging through the village, channeling buses from Swindon to Devizes. And to think, the whole place was once an ocean full of Beelamites who prayed, ate, waned, died, transmuted into bullets of stone. The white horse hides from prying eyes at Swallowhead Spring near to Avebury. Sometimes the white horse gets tired of celebrity status, loud children treading in his eye, turning 3 times and making wishes, people setting up easels, thinking they're Revilius, devotees of von Daniken insisting in his hearing that he is a message for aliens. And then the archaeologists get going, digging down to his thigh-deep underside, sampling silt. The horse has got to kick heels occasionally. Sometimes climbers on his back tickle and itch like flies. Even at dark moon, there is the danger some human do-gooder will climb up there, find he has absconded, leaving behind a dusty, horse-shaped trench. And when he has scampered off a mile above the ridgeway, making diversions to visit his chalky friends, he risks being spotted by some drunken neo-druid who has staggered out of the public house at Avebury for a pee. It has happened once or twice, and the white horse has loped into the cirrus, then come panting to ground at Swallowhead, craving water. He lies, flat as East Anglia, splayed out across the landscape, his head slotting perfectly under the arched bough of an ancient willow. A clootie is sucked inadvertently up his nostril. He has to suppress a sneeze. All around him there's an ooze of wetness which will make the kennet augmented by the winterbourne. His leg sinks whitely under the spira gyra. Now his breath is held. But no one comes. No one notices the black shadow of his absenteeism. No one reports him as a UFO. And the neo-druid's Wiccan friend has bought another round of real ale. A tardy swallow decides to migrate. The horse blinks. It begins to rain. At Windmill Hill, a major Neolithic settlement. "There's not much here," a tourist said earlier today. "Just a couple of barrows, and we've walked all this way. Nice view, though. Pity you can't see Avebury much, except for the church. Those trees ought to be trimmed. And from this distance, Silbury looks smaller. Darling, aren't you cold?" The white horse hears echoes of that voice and 1,000 others. But the older ones have more resonance, and they travel too, importing pottery, limpets and whelks from the Cornish coasts. Arrowheads of Portland chert, Mendip sandstone, Cotswold slate. Amid the voices of makers and merchants are murmurs of children, their bones in the ditches. The white horse inclines his ear, hears yet darker echoes from layers deeper than Bronze Age barrows. The laughter of women, rounding pots out of kennet clay, laying the foundations of culture. His deepest deposits of silt begin to luminesce. He touches ground, prods with a gentle hoof, feels the thrumming of all that existence under compacted earth, and the little buried things carved out of chalk come alive at his passing, the crude phalli throbbing in the loam. "There's not much here. Barrows, Avebury, Silbury, church. Darling, aren't you cold?" The white horse returns to Uppington to discover that the Red Arrows are doing one of their stunt flying displays. The white horse among the stars. The white horse spent half an hour this morning watching red arrows. He had to do it. He was pinned to the hill, and it is inadvisable to blink with so many people standing in your face. They spewed out red, white and blue smoke, and horses of flesh and blood also turned to watch them, every stallion and nag for miles around facing in the same direction. The white horse doesn't need Wikipedia to know the history. 1969, a gnat hit trees, 1 fatality. 1971, 2 gnats collided, 4 men dead. 1987, a hawk crashed into a house, no one died, insurance paid. 2011, crash, death, still under investigation. Iraq War, 114,731 civilians dead. Afghanistan and counting. The White Horse doesn't understand. He hasn't taken sides in wars or watched Top Gun, and the sound of children crying makes the fossils in him grind. When helicopters took folks up there to glimpse him from the air, the whole thing took three minutes from start to finish. His making took an age. It began with sea things' lives. He was born out of them with the whole hill. The downs formed in the ocean swell, seas receded, glaciers gouged out the manger, men emerged. They saw his form long before they cut it, looked from afar and discerned his arching spine on a windy landscape strewn with thistles. They paced him out from ear to tail, etched his throat with picks, dug his body deep. And when pilots and passengers are asleep, the fossils resonate, the eyeball widens. The White Horse peels himself from the hillside, looks down on village, orchard, town, blesses that child who helped to scour him with her little trowel, arches himself. His forelegs grapple with the turf, as though he was some imago emerging. That eyeball revolves, and at once he is leaping, catching thermals like a peregrine, slicing through clouds, slipping out of our atmosphere, leaving the merest smear of chalk, cavorting with Arcturus, aligning the pole star with his eye, seeking Betelgeuse in the visible. Each fossil becomes a star.